Good morning, everyone. We are here today at Partners in Crime Presents to chat with Mr. Shelly Frome. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And he has been with us for so many of his books. He's a member of Mystery Writers of America, a professor of dramatic arts, a former professional actor, and a writer of crime novels and books on theater and film. He also features, he is also a features writer for Gannett Publications. He lives in Black Mountain, North Carolina. Some of his fiction includes Sundance for Andy Horn, Lilac Moon, Twilight of the Drifter, Tinseltown Riff, Murder Run, Moon Games, The Secluded Village Murders, Miranda and the D-Day Caper, Shadow of the Gypsy, and what we're here to talk about today is Fast Times Big City. Welcome, Shelly.
Good grief. I guess I did do all those books.
You've been pretty busy.
Yeah, I know. I know. Just something happens.
It sounds like a lot of fun. You really enjoy writing.
Yeah, I think it was Joyce Carol Oates that said something we lost and or something we never had drives the work. So something has to happen because I can't just crank things out. And then it comes over. I think there was a teacher of creative writing in the Midwest that the only way to truly write is to try not to write. And then if you wake up in the middle of the night and you say, damn it, I can't stand it anymore, I have to work through this, then you're ready to begin,
It
which
sounds
I always
amazing.
thought was interesting.
Yeah.
You don't
So
have
do
to
you get
think
up?
it's interesting. I think it's interesting.
I think it's interesting. So do you get up a lot in the middle of the night to write?
No, but something starts to come over me and I have to work it out. Like this,
Like,
like this novel, Fast Times Big City. I just had this longing to go back to New York when I was a starving actor because New York was so different then. It was like a little town and they didn't have all those huge buildings. And I remember there was a diner and across from the Roxy Theater and the cats
yeah.
from West Side Story would come in and that diner isn't there, the Roxy Theater isn't there, none of it's there anymore. So the whole town was sort of like I don't know, everything just seemed accessible. Wherever you wanted to do or whatever, there it was, and there was progressive jazz is going on. Everything was just happening. But big problem was I was so naive. I didn't know what was going on. I just missed that sense of wonder. And it all became, sort of madcap after a while. I had a friend named Joan Walensky. She later changed her name to Joan Rivers, who was our actor, who was our agent. And last time I saw her, I said, Joan, you're a native New Yorker, and Tony is a Native American, and your name is Molinsky, and his name is Rivers, and you stole his name. How did he take that? She said, he hates me, hates my guts. And then she gave me her book, which is called I Hate Everybody. So there were just these marvelous people running around. And I was in a play called The Shrike, and my friend Hugh said, I've got it. We'll be bisexual and we'll have twice as many opportunities. And I said, Hugh, you be bisexual. Let me know how it goes. When are you thinking of starting? He said, tonight. So I just couldn't handle all this. And but anyway, there it was running around
That
everywhere I
sounds like
went.
so much fun.
Yeah, you could wake up in the middle of the night because the city never slept,
Mhm.
and you would have this problem, and you would meet somebody at 1 in the morning at Elaine's, and then you hash the whole thing out, and it was just I don't know. It just isn't there anymore. You can't afford to be a starving actor in New York anymore.
So Fast Times Big City, what year is that set in?
It's 1959. It was right it was right on the verge of everything. But the whole reason I wrote the book is I didn't know what was going on, and I was just affected by everything. Everybody I ran into was a different character or a different situation I'd never seen before. Because back in Miami, everything was. You probably don't believe this, but Miami was a sleepy little town then where I was growing up, and you
Really?
had to conform. You had to be good. And once I remember the eighth grade, I raised my hand and I said, "Do we have to keep reading Silas Marner?" And she said, "We've been doing Silas Marner since the summer of 1922. You raise your hand one more time, you're going to be cited for being maladjusted, and it's going on your permanent record." "Oh, no, not the permanent record. Oh, please, no, anything but that. I will be good." And then I get to New York, and then everything is, if you didn't misbehave, you had to leave. In fact, that was the criteria of misbehaving. That was just that was just the norm.
So tell us a little bit about Bud. Um, what kind of a character is he? I mean, who is he?
Um, he's somebody I wanted to be, always wanted to be, because they were there were these kids who were in the in crowd all the time, and they were
Yeah,
the president or the vice president, and everything came easy to them. And um, I don't know if you think of Tom Hanks or Robert Redford or something like that, and I always thought that would be so great, and I wanted to go back to New York at that time and not
yeah.
be naive and not be thrown by everything and not be saying, "Oh golly, oh gee, free love, what is that? What are you talking about?" And I wanted to be somebody who was sharp and with it, so I could see what was really going on in the world. And I mean, I didn't know that Castro was up in the Sierra Maestro mountains starting a revolution. I didn't know there was an IRA, right? The Irish Republican Army was doing something in Belfast. I didn't know what was going on, and because I thought the whole world was being a method actor and being in plays, and all that was going on, and I missed that. And I didn't want to be 22 years old anymore. I wanted to be sharp and with it. I wanted to be about 29, because that's the only way you could really contend with all this. And but that wasn't the story. The story was, but I know I'm babbling here. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to come up with something. But the story was he could have gone on. He was a sports writer for the Miami. In my mind, he was a sports writer for the
Yeah.
Miami Herald, and everything was fine. But then he has this wacky uncle. I guess everybody has them, right? On Thanksgiving, the one that starts carrying on and does all kinds of weird things. So he's in trouble, and somehow Bud has to get him out of it, and the only way to get him out of it is to go to New York. Is the whole thing, and because Rick has really done it this time, and he's in trouble with with the mafia or whatever you want to call them, and he has to go to New York, and he's really never been there before, and then wango, he comes across everything that threw me, but he's able to handle it, or maybe excuse me, maybe he's able to handle it. And maybe I could discover what it'd be like if I wasn't so naive, I wasn't so impressionable, if I was with it. And maybe I could learn something, but I was just fascinated because I didn't know what was going to happen to him. Can you follow that? I'm trying to follow it.
It sounds really interesting. I haven't gotten to read this book quite yet. So I'm really interested in Bud and who he is and how he got himself into the shenanigans.
Yeah, well,
It's really interesting that his
he
uncle,
has this wacko uh, Uncle Rick was always getting in trouble, and this was it was part of an all-night poker game, and I guess he lost all this money and he couldn't pay the mafia back, and this is kind of complicated, so I don't know how to do this, but there was and the key here is the briefcase because the mafia plans are in this briefcase, and his name was Escobar, the main baddie mafia
yeah,
person. This is getting complicated. But anyway, he needed a somebody who looked really nice and was really sweet to go to his sister's niece's wedding or something. And then,
right.
and all of a sudden she's gone, the suitcase is gone, and Rick is going to wind up in the depths of Biscayne Bay or something if he doesn't come through. And he pretends that Bud is a what is it called, a leg man,
Okay.
and that Bud will be able to get the suitcase back, and Bud doesn't know what's going on, but he can't let his mother down because his big sister, let's see, his mother's little brother is Rick, and he's always getting in trouble. And since Bud, like Tom Hanks and all that, is a good guy and all that, he gets roped into this, and he finds himself lost in Manhattan, and he's going to find this girl in the briefcase, and he doesn't know what's going on, but Bud is able to do it, whereas 22-year-old guy who's lost, wouldn't be able to do anything. So I'm counting on Bud getting through this. I'm just hoping he'll get through it.
All right. So you've shared a little bit about who Bud is as a person. Can you tell us a little bit about where the idea for this plot came from? Because this is a very intricate, in-depth plot that obviously started with a little bit of your experiences and your life moving from Miami to New York. But where did this plot come from?
Good question. I don't know where the plot came from. I all I knew was I didn't have a father and my mother was never around. So I had to find out things on my own just by making mistakes and putting my neck out there and all that kind of stuff. And I, somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought that if this character who always gets by somehow, always does the right thing, always, and he's a crackerjack reporter and all that, what kind of trouble could I put him in? Because and his mother's on a cruise, and he can't let his mother down. And it's unlike my mother, because my mother wouldn't know where I was if I was lost for 2 weeks. She probably wouldn't even know it. But his mother cares about everything, and he cares about his mother, and he gets roped into this. And I don't know if you can follow this or not, but I wanted a person who was intrepid. I mean, can you imagine Tom Hanks would probably come through, right? He would probably have a mom and a dad and a niece, and if he And if some relative was in trouble, he would probably stick his neck out and all that. So it's probably a huge wishful dream of mine to be Bud and to put him through this. I remember there's a famous, his name is Scott Meredith, who was a famous uh, Asian in New York. And he once told me the book isn't any good unless you have a character who absolutely has to do something, but it's impossible for him to do. And he said, if you've got that, you've got a story.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you've got quite the story then.
Yeah, I know. But the way I can tell is I was involved. And I said, I don't know what's going to happen here. And I keep finding these links. That's why I write it. These links come up that I didn't even know were there. And for instance, I'm writing this book, and I remember way back then here's another diner in Greenwich Village, and I used to go to this diner in Greenwich Village on Sunday, and there was a person by the name of Aegon there,
Yeah.
and he ran it, and he would make me scrambled eggs and bacon and stuff like that. And he was from some foreign country, and he said, today we talk about existentialism. Okay, Aegon. Okay, yes, sir. Existentialism. I didn't know what it was. So this time I put an Irishman there, and his name was Connor Larkin, and he is escaping from the IRA, but he's pretending to be writing books in Greenwich Village. He's trying to put these vignettes together, but he's always looking over his shoulder. And I was wondering what he's looking over his shoulder about. And then I discovered while I was writing this, he had something to do with the IRA. And the person, this is getting complicated, I know, but the person who wants the briefcase back from the mafia is also involved with the IRA. So these lines started to touch that I didn't even know were there. And I kept saying, wow, that's neat. That's pretty neat. And I didn't know that was going to happen. So, and it kept driving the book forward. And in the back of my mind, I kept hearing, do you remember Dave Brubeck? Did we hear of him? He was and Paul Desmond and Joe Marilla on drums. And I kept, through this whole thing, I kept hearing the drum beat and Joe Marilla's on drums, and this progressive jazz is running through this whole book, and the pulse also kept me going. So I was hearing jazz and wondering what was going to happen, and I just got lost in this book.
So you don't plot everything out. You don't have like post-it notes all over the wall. You're just like fly by
the minute I know what's going to happen, I don't want to do it.
Oh,
Oh, this is the day the Titanic sunk, right? It just doesn't. It just doesn't do it for me. I need this. In fact, I just the Mystery Writers of America had a book. It just came out, and people were writing ways of working, and sometimes they're called pantsers. You go by the seat of your pants, and I wrote this little piece for the Mystery Writers of America for this book, and I said that in effect, I don't want to know what's happening because that's what drives it. If I have the right dynamic, if I have the right place and everything, I know it's going to wind up somewhere, but that's what keeps me going.
wow.
Can you follow that?
Yeah. So
Okay.
now all your other books, because you've written a lot of books.
I know I will stop. I promise. I promise I'll stop.
You don't need to stop. We love reading your books. But none of them are connected in any way. They're all completely unique and standalone. So how do you do that with all completely new characters and
Well, when I was a kid in Miami, I used to read, and I read Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Ray Bradbury and J.D. Salinger. And J.D. Salinger didn't write Catcher in the Rye 2 or Catcher in the Rye meets the
Yeah.
Wolfman or here's the prequel to Catcher in the Rye, here's the sequel. That was it. It was, and that's all. And then the I think it was Robert Frost said that it just burns out. The energy burns out and the poem is done or whatever. And Hemingway wrote The Sun Also Rises, but he didn't say, and now the exciting sequel to The Sun Also Rises, or anything. So I just in the back of my mind, I hadn't thought about this, but that's what I thought writing was, because I started as an actor, then I became a playwright, and then I started I started writing these novels because I don't want to upset you, but theater would be wonderful if you didn't have to deal with people, if you could if you didn't have to put up with strange, wacky people and everything. So I started writing plays, and then I started writing novels. So my idea of being a novelist is J.D. Salinger and Ernest Hemingway. And I know it sounds old fashioned, but that's
No.
there were two books that connected with the character's name was Miranda, and the
Yeah.
first one is called Moon Games, and
Mhm.
then I realized that she is so feckless. She keeps messing up and stumbling into these crimes and everything. And I said, God, wouldn't it be good if Miranda finally, after all this, was able to function and she didn't have to be feckless anymore? And then I put her into another book, which is a sequel called Miranda and the D-Day Caper. And I gave her something to really worry about, which was white nationalism. I don't want to get into politics, but that was going on at the time. And I
Yeah.
said, okay, Miranda, okay, now you're going to have to really do something. You can't putz around. You can't be feckless anymore. You've learned, you've made all your mistakes. Now you're going to have to grow up and actually accomplish something. So that's where Miranda and the D-Day came from. And it just got, the Audible version just got a gold award from the judges in London and Stockholm. So I feel good about that.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah. So, sometimes you get some positive feedback and it gives you the feeling, well, maybe I've done good. Maybe I should keep doing this thing that I'm doing.
So, which of your books did you love writing the most, or did you learn the most from?
Well, I love Fast Times Big City because it was writing itself.
Yeah.
Because I just, things just kept appearing. And I think it's because of my background and everything I knew and everything I'd experienced. And somehow or other, it just kept happening. It just kept proliferating. Something happened here and something happened there. And then he met this sweet girl, the one who swiped the briefcase, but she wasn't like all the girls I knew when I was there. They weren't, everyone I knew had all this mileage on them. And I always wanted to run into a sweet girl from the Midwest who didn't have all this mileage on her, and who actually was a believer. And Amy went to New York because she was from the Midwest and she was told that she had this talent and all this stuff. It's a long story, but when he finally found her, I said, this is great because maybe he and Amy can get together. Bud and
Yeah.
Amy somehow or other, and he could fall in love with her or something will happen. So it's this dynamic that things just kept popping and and pulling me here and pulling me there. And it's that constant sense of motion and danger and fun and I don't know what else. And I thought, this is great. For me anyway.
Yeah. And our reviewers loved it. So do you do a lot of research for your books or do you just do a lot for memory, and how you remember things?
Uh, I had to do some research because I had to find out about the Chelsea Hotel because that was the time that you could be a starving actor and it had 250 rooms and all these people who hadn't worked or had been in vaudeville or anything, they were staying at this Chelsea Hotel. It was huge. And now again, it isn't there anymore. But I wanted that to be part of the story. And I wanted Amy to be hiding in the Chelsea Hotel. So I had to do research on the way the rooms were laid out and the fact that there had been artists that had lived there and they left their work there. Instead of having to pay rent, they would leave a sculpture piece or a painting or something. So it's all hanging from the wall, all the stuff they've done from 1920 or 24 or 1931. That's all gone now. But I had to do research because I can't just say, and then Bud walked into the Chelsea Hotel and wondered where Amy was. I had to know. There was an elevator and where the elevator was and so I had to do research on that.
So what are
Does
some
that
of
make
the
sense?
best things that you learned that you didn't put in the story that you found interesting?
I'm sorry, would you say that again?
What things did you learn that you found really interesting that maybe you didn't put in the story?
I I find that without an adventure,
Yeah.
without putting yourself on the line, that you'll never really know who you are. You'll never know what your potential is. You that somehow that you need a proving ground at some point in your life, and supposedly like the Native Americans go up and into the mountains or something in Lakota, and they have a vision quest, but they go through something and they come back as somebody else. They now have a new name which they didn't have before. So I didn't know that, but I know that now that if you don't go through something, if you just do what you're supposed to do, and you never get in trouble, you never stick your neck out, you never try anything. And I think it was I don't know, I was reading some other novelist, I can't remember her name, Margaret, I can't remember her name, but she was saying the worst thing in the world was for her to Margaret Atwood. You ever heard of her? Yeah, and she said the worst in the world you can have is a good character who behaves himself. And she gave the example that there was some character named Mabel, and Mabel is good all the time, does what she's supposed to do, and just lives clean thoughts. And then Margaret Atwood said, "Would you like to know more about Mabel?" As a reader, probably not, right? This is the day Margaret went shopping for eggs. This is the day Mabel went to the park and fed the pigeons.
Mhm.
Oh boy. Wow.
Wouldn't make for much of a book, would it?
No, I don't think it would. So that's one of the things I learned.
Mhm.
I also learned that I had to go through these things in order to find out who I am
Yeah.
in a way, because as I said, I never had any guidance. So one of the ways I can find out who I am or what I am or what is to go through these adventures, but I have to admit I don't really want to go to them. I don't really want to run into the mafia and stuff like that. So I do it this way. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of fun.
You know, I guess. But I actually suffer. I go through these things, but I give myself points for the suffering or what I went through. I ring that up. I said, okay, kid, you done good. You got somewhere. Because I just can't write books where I know what's going to happen. I mean, I myself have to go through something.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't do what John Grisham does. And, you know, he says he steals from everybody and he cranks these things out. So I know he's famous and I know all that, but I just can't do that. His wife helps him too. She looks at the newspaper and she said, John, John's from Mississippi. And she said, John, I think I got a new novel for you right here. Look at this headline right here, right here. Look at that. What do you think, huh? And they said, yeah, that's good. And he cranks that out. And because he started out as yes, you probably know, he started out as a lawyer. And then he wrote this first novel. I can't remember the name of it. And it caught on and he isn't lawyering anymore. He's making lots of money. And he's happy, you know, God bless John, he's happy, but I just can't do that.
Are you working on something, a new book for us?
Yeah, I'm working on another one. I can't stop. I'm working
We
on
enjoy it.
what am I calling it? I'm calling it Charlie's Gambit.
Oh.
And that I live in this neighborhood in Black Mountain, and there are these older guys who are always working on something. They're working on their lattice, or they're mowing the lawn, or they're fixing the drain pipe or something, and that's all they do. They're retired, and I don't know. It just started to get to me, and I wanted a character to have something happen to him. I wanted him to get in trouble or some kind of danger, let go of the lattice work, stop mowing the lawn, you know, and do something or do something for somebody else, or have a quest, a real quest, instead of going to Ingles Market and picking up some groceries and coming home and working on his lattice work again. I wanted something to happen. So that's what this is all about.
Well, I can't wait to see it. When can we expect it?
I don't know. I've done 41,000 words. I don't know if that means anything, but I'm not sure where it's going yet. And
Oh,
again, I don't crank these things out.
right.
They just sort of stay with me. I remember I did a book on playwriting, and there was this famous playwright named Robert Anderson, and I was interviewing him back in Connecticut. And he said, somebody just kept bugging him all the time. He says, how's the play going? How's the play going? He said, I'm working on it. I'm working on it. And after a couple of months, he couldn't stand anymore. And they said, how's the play going now, Robert? And he said, it's finished. Now all I have to do is write it down. And I always remember that. So in my mind, these things are still going on. And so I'm writing, even though I'm sitting here talking to you, I'm still writing in my mind.
I'll keep it in mind not to bother you until you're done.
No, it's okay. It's all right. Just don't say, how's it going? You can say how it's going. I don't care. It's fine. That's great.
I love talking to you. Thank you so much for
Really?
joining us today.
Thanks for being nice.
You make it easy.
Oh, my late wife used to say that every time we were gonna go somewhere. She said, "Is he nice? Is she nice?" And I never got over that.
Oh, that's a great memory.
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you for being nice.
Well, thank you for joining me today, and we will chat again soon, I am very sure. If anybody wants to see Shelly's books, check out the caption, and I will have links to his website so that you can see all of his stuff. And definitely check out Fast Times Big City, and we will be waiting for Charlie's Gambit. So thank you so much, and we will talk again.